Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of the Lorefield podcast, a Starfield news and lore podcast featuring myself, Mitch, and my good friend and co host, Yzra.
Hello.
It's been a busy month. How was yours, Yzra? Mine was pretty good. It got a lot better at a certain point.
It's been pretty good. The drought's over.
The drought is over. I was thinking like rain drought. Was there something in the UK I didn't hear about? But I got you now. Yes, the drought is over. On March 16th, Into the Starfield episode 2, Made for Wanderers, dropped, delivered a ton of notable quotes about the game, a dozen new concept arts, and a brief little snippet of in-game footage. And we will be breaking down all of it today. Lots of exciting details and finds, so much to talk about. But first, in episode 8, we had some really great YouTube comments from you, the listeners, and we wanted to acknowledge and respond to some of those. So, Yzra, why don't you take away some of our YouTube comments?
All right. So, first comment is from Ravid, and they say first, congratulations.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Ravid. We applaud you.
And then from Gaming Boy, we have a comment saying, love the recap. Well, thank you. That's really nice. Thank you. And they also commented, honestly, I think that we will have multiple different ships to buy because we have seen 3 different spaceships. Yeah, I'm definitely falling into my hangar theory. It's like all modular. So, that's the hope.
Yeah, the modular stuff really came to light this month. We'll be talking about that later, but definitely agree.
And they also commented, the reason I think we'll be able to join a pirate group is because of the Dark Brotherhood and vampires in Skyrim and Oblivion. They are 2 bad factions, as people call them, and yet you can join them. I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, a little bit of clairvoyance here from Gaming Boy. Last month we were talking about how we don't think we'll be able to join some of these evil factions like the Crimson Fleet. And another thing we'll be talking about later, but we were proven miraculously wrong. And Gaming Boy brought up a good point. Like, you can play as a Dark Brotherhood. They're extremely evil. What's more evil than a band of serial killers? So, good point, Gaming Boy. Vampires too. I would probably consider vampires evil most of the time. But perfectly good reason to think we'd be able to join the Crimson Fleet, and Gaming Boy was absolutely right.
Do you want to read the next ones?
Sure. We got a good comment from Zachary Murdoch. I think the point of divergence is around 2005 when NASA began the Constellation program, one of its attempts to replace the space shuttle with the Ares 1 and 5 rockets, which was canceled in 2009. The main culprit was lack of funding by the US Congress, but what if Constellation was adequately funded and its technical hurdles were compensated for? We would certainly be back to the moon by now. This would not have affected SpaceX, as the Ares 1 and 5 would still be very expensive to build and launch, so a commercial crew program would likely still have occurred. There remains a question, though. If this scenario is correct, what would motivate Congress to double NASA's budget? Perhaps finding something interesting like an alien relic on the moon. The moon does show up in the first dev trailer, so that might be a reason. Yeah, we had a good conversation last month about when the timeline will diverge from our world to Starfield's, and that could be in the future. But Zachary Murdoch's theory is that it was in the mid-2000s, which is exactly in line with what you said, Yzra. That was an interesting theory. It would be very convenient for the switch to occur around the time the space shuttle ends, because that's such an important time in space history. It was recent enough that the roots and foundations of space exploration stay the same, but now you have a decade or so that you can play with if you're Bethesda to kind of shape the timeline how you want it to make Starfield look the way you want it to look. So I like that theory, Zachary. Cartsy commented on the same topic, saying, personally, I don't think the timeline divergence has happened yet. The point of divergence will happen organically if/when our present and the history in Starfield start to conflict with each other. Also, in the teaser trailer at 1 minute and 18 seconds, the gravity, power, and life support systems have manufacturers and names in the bottom left of their displays, so it's likely we'll be able to swap them out. Really good catch there. And that's another interesting theory, that it could be in the future. When they say it takes place in our universe, I think that makes that scenario pretty likely, that it's in our future, and the divergence will happen, like, as you say, organically. How far into the future, we don't know, because we don't know what our future looks like. Ron Snow also commented on this same topic, saying Starfield is about our future, not about some parallel past. And that's true. I just wonder, so if we know Constellation was founded in 2188, we've heard that Constellation is the last group of space explorers. So wouldn't that mean that by 2188, we've already been exploring space for a while in order to have the last group of space explorers? So my thinking is that 150 years, when you're doing something as big as exploring space, it's not a very long time. Like, we got to start getting on this stuff, if we're supposed to be exploring space in 150 years. So I just wonder if Bethesda has maybe taken some liberties and, I guess, amended would be the word, subtly changed some elements of our past so that they can shape our future into the direction they want it to go, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You're going to take Gob's comment here?
Yep. So, Gob commented, what if the drug is an Aurora carrier, which is eggs? That'd be a fancy way to get absolutely zoinked. You're putting that image in my head. That would be hilarious. And I kind of want to see what we can do with Aurora in-game now. See what we can mix it with. Make an Aurora cocktail.
I think the fish eggs, maybe they're like an alchemy ingredient. So they're one of the little things that you can pick up in your inventory and rotate them around, look at them.
Make a potion of regeneration.
Yeah. You taste them, and then your character goes, oh, and you get an effect.
That sound effect, you reminded me of the Oblivion guards.
Good point, though, Gob. We did see the Aurora fish again with this later video. That didn't really answer the question of where the Aurora comes from, but we saw the fish and a squid. There was a squid too.
More about the squid in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then next we have David Sabalon, and they said like, commented, and subscribed. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I hope you will cover the news that the Persuasion System in Oblivion will be in Starfield. We will get to that very soon, actually. But I just want to state now, they were inspired by the Oblivion system. It's not the exact same system, I don't think. It's not going to be that horrible wheel, the pizza wheel, that I've never been able to figure out. But we'll get to that later. And then finally we have Slynell1, and they said good stuff. Again, thank you very much. I keep saying this, but we really do appreciate it. Helps us grow in our anticipation for Starfield that we all share.
Yeah, thank you. I echo Yzra's sentiments. Thank you very much for the kind and supportive comments, and also thank you for the ones that correct us or dissent from us. That's fun. That's what we're here for. We're a lore discussion podcast, so we're mature enough. If you think we're saying something stupid, call us out. We love it. We'll talk about it. So thank you for every single comment. We really do appreciate it.
And by the way, don't forget, if you're watching the YouTube version, we have visuals, and that's where our comments come from. So if you want your comment read on the next episode, just comment on the YouTube version with your question or your point of view, opinion on what we talk about. We'd love that. So don't forget to do that. if you want to.
With that, then, should we get into episode 2 of Into the Starfield, Made for Wanderers?
Let's do it.
So I thought we could tackle this by first talking about the notable quotes that the 4 people in the video, Todd Howard, Emil Pagliarulo, Istvan Paley, and Will Shen, said. And then after that, we'll get to the dozen concept arts and break those down. So how does that sound?
Sounds good.
Alrighty, awesome. So the first quote came 10 seconds in, really. Came out punching. Emil Pagliarulo said, "It's a giant open world for the player to do what they want." And this seems kind of obvious on the surface, but I thought it was important because there's been debate over whether each world is going to be instanced, like Outer Worlds, kind of sequestered from the other, or if we'll be able to have seamless space travel. And if Emil Pagliarulo is saying it's a giant open world in the singular for the player to do what they want, I'm inclined to believe that everything is going to be it's at least going to have the illusion of being seamlessly tied together.
I think Bethesda Game Studios have nailed the open world already. So, a giant open world. That's interesting, because he didn't say worlds. He said world, as in one. Maybe they consider the whole game world a map. I don't know, that's an interesting wording. Because we know it can't be just one world.
Yeah, there's been way too much diversity we've seen. And we know Neon is on a nondescript water planet.
Yeah, it's like, wait, he did make a mistake before. If you remember, I think he called our solar system the galaxy or something. What did he say again?
I think it was vice versa. He was talking about our galaxy, but he said solar system.
Oh yeah, that's right. I mean, it could have been an error, or maybe the S wasn't on worlds. I don't know. I think that's an interesting phrasing. A giant open world. So is he talking about the whole thing?
I mean, they have already, as you absolutely correctly say, Bethesda has already mastered the open world. So maybe now they're going to make an attempt at doing the open galaxy / open star system thing. Because if you think about it, there's so many ways they could break up the world into loading screens. They could do different regions of different planets and sequester them by like ship or vehicle, or even just like a mountain passage that starts a loading screen when you walk through it. They could zoom out a little more and do each planet or moon being its own zone. They could do each star system being its own zone. And really, they could go farther than that, but I can't imagine they would. So that'll be an interesting thing that'll affect how the game mechanically feels as traveling from one place to another. The next notable quote comes from Todd Howard, and it's about a minute later. Todd says, "A lot of us have been doing this for a long time together, so it's nice with Starfield to go back to some things we didn't do. The backgrounds, the traits, defining your character, all those stats. And I think there's so many games now that do those things that people are ready now for something that does a lot of the things that older hardcore RPGs, some that we used to do, doing those again in a new way." So this is some insight. Something weird is going on with character creation, choosing your background traits. So maybe like you pick a class or something. What that kind of sounds like is the stones in Skyrim, or the signs. I'm sorry, except you pick it at character creation, and it's a trait, and you don't change it. That's how I'm reading that. It could be any number of things, but there's one theory. Defining your character, all those stats. Wow. What's your take here?
I think it will be like you say, the standing stones in Skyrim, because those used to be birth signs, I believe. So they used to be things you'd pick, in menus when you were creating your character. Well, in Morrowind it was part of the tutorial. You'd go through and then you could pick your birth sign and your attributes. So I'm wondering if they're going to do something like that. Or a mix between how they did it in Morrowind and Oblivion. Because I think that's what people have been asking for, and what they felt was lacking from Fallout 4 was, your character could be specific stats. They could be tailored to specific things rather than, oh, you can just pick these perks and you can basically stack your way up to being able to use everything if you really want to. But yeah, like, if they bring back stuff like attributes and stuff like that, I think that could be really good.
I'm just really intrigued by the word traits, because that's not really one they've used before. Because we have skills, we have birth signs, standing stones, as you say. They've done classes. To my knowledge, I don't recall them doing traits before. So that'll be an exciting thing to learn about.
I think Fallout New Vegas had traits. You could pick 2 special perks. At Doc Mitchell, you could choose 2 specific perks. And one of them was Wild Wasteland, which would make the game all wacky, like some of the stuff you could encounter in Fallout 3 and stuff. So I'm wondering if it's like that. You get to choose 2 traits. So like in New Vegas, there's a 4 Eyes one where you get bonus stats if you wear glasses. Something like that.
It'll be fun to pick a trait that like fits your backstory. So if you pick a background that's like you're an intellectual and you spend a lot of time in a, then you pick the one that gives you a bonus when you wear glasses or something like that.
Absolutely. So next we have a comment from Will Shen, who is the lead quest designer and also lead writer on Far Harbor, right?
Yeah.
Which has got a lot of people excited that he's a quest designer. And he says, "We always make a bunch of different groups that represent some of the major factions in every game. We've got the United Colonies that represents the futurist space republic, idealized. You also have the Freestar Collective, which is the space western fantasy. People that are out there on the frontier. We've got Ryujin Industries, which represents corporate life. I think it has one of the best starts." Now, this has really got me excited because it's basically confirmed starting. Like, there's different starts. At least that's what I'm taking from this. Because it says, I think it has one of the best starts. That's very, like, specific wording, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, maybe we can choose our background and, that'd be awesome, Like, you could start in the Freestar Collective, or I could start in the United Colonies. Or if someone wants to start in Neon, they can. That'd be so cool. And they've never done something like this before. Like, you've always started at one location. So maybe these starts are like your first step out moment. And then, obviously, you have your step out moment traditional, where you first go and explore and stuff. Or you find something that may or may not be scripted, but if they can spark a second step out moment, like you think you've found something, but it's actually the plot, and you, I don't know. It's like, it's really interesting for me to think about. I think that's awesome.
It is, and I wonder, with the previous comment about defining your character and picking your background, if the background you pick will be how you select the faction you start the game with, or if those two things will be independent from each other.
Hopefully they talk about this at E3.
Yeah.
But I think Todd might, because if you've noticed at the showcases, he does not talk about story. He never talks about story. In fact, for Fallout 4, they edited how the game flows. Like, they edited the entire Cotsworth conversation. There's no mention of Sean or what happens to your husband or wife in the vault. You're just the sole survivor. But to tie it around to why I'm saying this is because Todd probably won't talk about story, but he probably will talk about systems because he showed off the crafting for Fallout 4. He showed all those systems. And actually, there's in the the montage where he's editing the weapons. Well,
Yeah.
The footage is editing the weapons. There's like a whisper halfway through, and I've always wondered what that was, but that's going off topic. Yeah, I've tried slowing it down. It doesn't make sense, but yeah, that's going off topic. But like, I think he will show off. He very well might show off stuff like how your game starts. I think he will show that probably, and he might talk about different starts. Obviously, they'll go with a pre-built character. They'll probably go with the default male character, or maybe they'll want to show off the pronouns. But there's a lot they could do. Like, and they've got 30 minutes to do this, and you get like a 10-minute demo, then talk concept, then you get the collector's edition reveal, and obviously
The limited edition console reveal.
Maybe, yeah.
Fingers crossed.
But I think it's going to be interesting because, yeah, I don't think it's going to show story, but he's almost definitely going to show stuff like this, probably. Like, because he'll want to talk about what you can do when you create your character. Like, if starting locations, that would be really cool to show off, right? It's except at the beginning of the game. It's not really a spoiler, and it's showing off new systems. And if they showed the traits and like what they're like, it might pull forward some people who were disappointed before that 4.
Yeah, and the way this is worded, it sounds like, so Will Shen talks about United Colonies, Freestar Collective, and Region Industries all having their own starts. That doesn't sound like it's an exhaustive list. I think there might be even more. Imagine if there's a Crimson Fleet start.
That'd be great for our Crimson Fleet fans out there.
Yeah.
Actually, bringing up the Crimson Fleet, we said last episode that we didn't think they were going to be joinable.
We did.
And we were very, very wrong. And they disproved it literally 2 weeks after the episode went up.
I think, obviously, that means that Todd Howard listens to the Lorefield podcast.
Absolutely. Well, someone does. Just to prove us wrong.
No, I've never been more happy to be completely wrong about something in my life, though.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk more about the Crimson Fleet in a minute.
So in response to that Will Shen quote about the different factions you can start the game with, Emil Pagliarillo says about Region Industries, it's a megacorp and you get hired. Will Shen responds, you apply for a job, we'll see if you cut the mustard. So it sounds like in the Region Industries start, you do this like corporate thing, like work for this big corporation. That's going to be a lot of fun because United Colonies and Freestar Collective are more governmental, like state bodies, and now they're letting us start in the private sector, which has not really happened before. Vault-Tec, is a private corporation, but I believe they were tied pretty closely to the U.S. government with the experiments and all those things. But to have a clear-cut option of both, you can be the corpo, and this reminds me of a certain game, Cyberpunk 2077, where you can choose completely different life paths for the beginning of the game. Very reminiscent.
Absolutely. It makes me worried. I know CD Projekt Red is not Bethesda, but like if you start the corpo life path in that game, and slight spoilers for the prologue, but it goes by quite quickly. In that, you immediately on the first mission you get kicked out of the corporation, so you don't really get to live that corpo life. So I'm hoping these backgrounds aren't just, it's just your start and then you get kicked off this, which I don't think it's going to do, because if you can start with the 3-star collective, why would they just boot you out of a faction if they're potentially joinable? So I'm hoping with like this kind of like, you know, you can stick with these starting factions instead of, like, say if I want to join Ryujin, after I've started the United Colonies, there might be a process for that, but I can just start, if I start in that faction, I'm automatically in it, so I don't really have to do much to get in. Whereas if I'm in another faction as a starting point, I have to kind of prove myself to that faction instead, which I think could be really interesting. Obviously it was speculation, but
Yeah, I also wonder, so let's say we start the game with United Colonies, could we finish the game, or if there's another kind of a colony war 2, so to speak, could we fight for the Freestar Collective, even though we started the game with UC, and then become a Freestar Collective Ranger or whatever? How much crossover they'll allow there. I have to think that if they're doing an RPG and they allow the player to tell their own story, I'm sure we'll be allowed to. But they're going to have to write that in somehow, so it'll be interesting to see.
absolutely. It's like, now this what I'm about to say is a real shot in the dark, but imagine if this game ends with the spark of the next war and we literally get to decide how this war starts, or who starts what, and then when the second game takes place, like a theoretical second game, we see the results of that war. This is a huge shot in the dark and complete speculation on my part, but I'm just thinking, like, they're in an uneasy peace, so the war could break out again very easily, and obviously that would be one hell of a way to end the game. Or maybe even we settle the conflict altogether in the game. Who knows? But that's just my wildest speculation for today.
It's fun to think about. And maybe we'll do the Skyrim Civil War thing again with the colony, with the UC and FC conflict, and we can be like a neutral arbiter.
Yeah. You alright for us to go on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. So Todd says, after, what we're doing with the pirates, the Crimson Fleet as well, they're not just this foe. Let the player join them. Which, this is first confirmation, yes, we can join the Crimson Fleet. Me and Mitch were wrong, because obviously we're going to get stuff wrong in this phase of Starfield's timeline. Like the IRL timeline, not the fictional timeline that will...
And there's no shame in being wrong. Like I said earlier, like, I'm really excited to join the Crimson Fleet, and like could not be happier about being wrong about that prediction.
And then, like, literally after this, like, after Todd says what he says, Emil follows up by saying, the cool thing about the Crimson Fleet, what if you're a good person and want to be a good player and you don't want to play as the bad guy? As a bad guy, sorry. You can side with the pirates or report back to your superiors and be the space cop type of thing. Ooh. We can play double agent.
We have 8 months to think of which one we're gonna do. What are you leaning towards right now?
I think I'm going to be a double agent. I'm gonna like infiltrate the Crimson Fleet and report to my superiors, be like a secret agent, or what I'm calling a double agent, because you're joining a faction, but you're actually just telling all their secrets to the other factions.
I can't decide. So my first playthrough in a Bethesda game is usually good-ish. I might murder the occasional person just when I'm feeling like it. But generally I like to play as a good person. So I think I'll either do the double agent or I just might be like kill on sight for the Crimson Fleet. I'm not sure. I really want their armor, so I have to kill at least one of them if I don't join them.
I'm probably gonna do the quick save thing. Quick save and then shoot one of them and see what happens.
There are memes like where your character you press quick save and everyone around you gets a terrified look on their face because they know what's coming.
Testing the waters. It's like I think 90% of the people that played Fallout 4, as soon as they went into Diamond City, they just shot someone.
I think when you first walk into Diamond City, or maybe it's later in the game, but there's like a really big meeting right outside like Takahashi's noodle stand, so there's a lot of people standing close together. I fat manned that meeting.
Oh no, how could you?
It was fun. It was fun. Not many survivors, but the next one is something we had kind of briefly alluded to earlier. Emil says, we knew we wanted to do some kind of persuasion mini game thing. That sounds familiar in a Bethesda Game Studios game. Will Shen responds, yeah, we sat down and it was funny. We didn't start with, let's do an evolution of the old Oblivion system, but there are a couple of beats there. You have to think about what's my risk here, which one do I want to choose. We didn't want it to be a system where there's definitely the right thing to say. Todd responds, it feels like you're having a conversation where you're actually trying to persuade somebody of something. As far as new systems and dialogue, I think it's definitely one of the most successful ones that we've had. So I noticed like websites kind of ran with this and said like Starfield is going to have Oblivion's dialogue system. This sentence from Todd, it feels like you're having a conversation where you're actually trying to persuade somebody. That right there says that this is not Oblivion's dialogue system.
I don't think anyone knows how Oblivion's dialogue system works. I mean, sure you could look on the wiki and figure out how it works, but I've always just randomly clicked around and hoped it worked. I always found bribing the NPC was a lot easier because you just spam one button.
I guess it feels kind of icky saying this, but there were certain races where it was hard to read their facial expressions. Like Khajiit, I think. I couldn't tell when they were happy.
Nothing's creepier than an Oblivion NPC smiling.
But yeah, that's exciting. Fallout 4's persuasion system was just a dice roll that was influenced by your charisma stat. And Skyrim, I don't even know what influenced the persuasion dice roll, if there was anything.
I think it's literally a persuade option, and it has like a % chance of happening. You have to have a high speech. That's literally how it works.
Oh, is it? That's right. It would be the speech skill. Forgot about that.
In Fallout 4, it's like the most simplest version of it, because everyone just quick saves and then tries again and again and again, and eventually it'll work.
Yeah, it's kind of been reduced each game in complexity, and it sounds like that complexity is coming back this time.
I think in Fallout 4, if your charisma's higher than 10, it's almost guaranteed to work. That's one way to break the game.
One of many.
It wouldn't be a Bethesda game if you couldn't break it by abusing systems.
Absolutely not.
Oh boy, I can't wait for the Starfield duplication glitch.
It's coming. We know it's coming. There was just one last notable exchange in the dialogue of the videos. Do you want to bring us home with that one?
Yep. So Emil follows up by saying, as a game we have romance, adventure, mystery, but I think with Starfield there's this other layer of the cosmos, the universe, and what's out there. Sorry, and what is out there. And then Todd responds saying, at the end of it, we want the players to have told their own journey, but then look back at it and we're asking the big questions. Why are we all here? Where is it leading? What's next for humanity? I think that might answer what those big questions are.
Yeah, we spent so much time speculating on what was by answering humanity's biggest questions, and Todd kind of spells it out for us. So thank you, Todd. My dream of having the game end on a cliffhanger where an alien is revealed and it's the first contact, the credits roll, and then in Starfield 2 we've kind of assimilated with aliens. It doesn't sound like that's going to happen, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't know if they do a... I don't know how a cliffhanger would work, because in Bethesda games you can continue after the story. So, I don't know. I mean, they've shown that monolith, and that we found something. So I wonder if Todd's doing what Todd does, and he's masking one of the questions, or he's not talking about one of the questions. Like, we know there's some sort of alien structure, so something to do with the plot's gotta do with that, right?
Yeah.
Because also the woman in Constellation says, what you found, it is the key to it. Sorry, I don't know why I'm saying it like this. But she says, it's the key to unlocking everything, what you've discovered. So obviously, I imagine the prologue is what I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say. In the prologue, we discover something, and that could be our second moment. We think we've discovered something, but it's scripted, but not in a way that you'd notice immediately. You know, they obviously want to make the player feel like they've accomplished something. So if you go on the prologue mission, and then when you finish you discover that device, and what I'm thinking is, I've had another theory of what that device is. My personal take is, I think that's some sort of teleportation device. I think it's going to open some sort of gateway. And I think that could, in theory, and this is the big shot in the dark, is the final mission is the other side of that gateway. We get it working, and then we go through it, and the last mission is through whatever's through that gateway. And it ends with us leaving and reporting it. And then maybe one faction, whoever we choose, takes control of that device. And then it's left open in the air what happens next. And then that way they've opened the door for Starfield 2, spin-offs, stuff like that. But that's what I think. I think it could be some sort of gateway. Not just about cracking light speed or something. It's literally like a teleporter. Like in Minecraft, you light a nether portal. It's literally a portal. You walk through it or something. I don't know. Speculation, but that's what I think. And tying it back around to why I'm even saying this is because I feel they don't want to reveal anything about that device until we get the game. And maybe that device isn't as important, but I don't know, to me that feels important. And the wording in the trailer, I just don't think they're going to talk about it. I feel like, if anything, they don't want to tell us or spoil that, because that might be story focused. Hell, we don't even know it's an alien device. This is speculation, and you know, the sketches, the poster, what the woman says in the teaser, like, to me that's pointing to all that. And I think it's some sort of gateway, and that's going to answer, are we alone? In Bethesda's Starfield universe, anyway.
You were talking about cliffhangers and how they might work when you can play after the story ends.
Mm-hmm.
There was an open world game I played, and I can't remember what. Maybe somebody could remind me if they know, where it ended with like, I think the protagonist died, and then you could play after the story ended, and you got a message. You can continue to play, and it's like it's as if the events of the end of the game never happened. So that was how they just broke the fourth wall and told you, just this is before all that. You know, you can keep playing. So that could be one way they handle it.
And unless they do what they did with Fallout 3, and in making Fallout 3 a faithful game like Fallout 1, this is what I think they were doing with Fallout 3. The reason why Fallout 3 originally ended, sorry, spoilers, so you can skip ahead, obviously, if you've never played Fallout 3 or you don't want to get spoiled for that game, but in that game, if you turn on the purifier, you die. That's it. Your story's over. And people didn't like that, because that wasn't the BGS thing. You know, but you can continue after. So unless they do something like that. But I also tell myself with Fallout 3, it's like Fallout 1. Fallout 1 ends as soon as you beat the game. Fallout 2, I don't believe it does, but there's a hard time limit. So after so many years, the game will stop working. Or the game will end. Something like that. But I didn't mind how Fallout 3 ended. But I know a lot of people didn't like it. Because it, you know, it's implied you died when you turned on the purifier. And they made a DLC to rectify the complaints. And that was Broken Steel. And that makes it so you don't die and you can... There's more story. That's not where the game ends. So... Who knows? But they have done it before, so... It's always a card. Okay, so that was all of the notable quotes from the recent Into the Starfield video, and now we're going to go over the 12 new concept arts in the order they appeared. So the first one is of what appears, it's like a large industrial shipyard, right, on like a desert rocky planet. There's a shipping container suspended from a ship. It seems to be a common mode of cargo transport. You know, you've in this one we've got people for scale, and then I don't know, what are we like underneath? Like the structure is angled, so maybe it's a ship or a ramp, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
At first, I was like all on board that it was a ship. I thought it was like a huge capital ship. And on the right, you can see like another inclined thing that's kind of going up to meet whatever we're underneath. And I thought that might be a ramp. And then what we see covering up like the upper half of the art is like the underbelly of this huge ship. But looking at it more, I'm more convinced that this is just like the roof of a hangar that's maybe built into a mountain or something. It does seem to be more of a remote location. So, you know, me and my Star Wars references, this could be something like Hoth's Echo Base, where they built a pretty cool like outpost or shipping yard into a mountain. I would bet that this is on the same planet as those like weird crab things.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think those are helium-3 tanks in the back? Those tall cylindrical things? There's two of them.
Maybe? Because the helium-3 is a gas, so you could contain it in something like that, I think. I mean, they put normal helium in canisters, so... And that's a gas.
Another interesting little detail is that those three people you see like working the shipyard are wearing high visibility clothing, presumably so that pilots can see them as they're coming into land. And the farthest one out there has their arms up, just like real world airports do. They wear those, or they hold those flashy light things, and they back the planes out and direct them in. Cool little detail.
I've also noticed there's it's like a mechanical arm looking thing in near the middle. So I'm wondering if that's like some sort of compact crane sort of thing, more like a mechanical arm, but like it picks up stuff, heavy stuff, like spins it around. I don't know, move it around a lot, like what that ship's carrying, like a container.
I bet you're right. I saw that and was thinking like turret or cannon, but that makes way more sense and looks more like it. Yeah.
And I think unless you have any more details you found, I think that'll be it for this one.
I think so.
Okay, so the next one is of a new Atlantis Spaceport, and this ship right here is almost the exact same as the Frontier from the E3 2021 teaser. The only difference in this case is the colour scheme, and this appears to be, I want to say, United Colonies colours, but it could also just be the new Atlantis colours. And I think you can see the same colours on the flags in the background. We've got, flight crew as well, wearing the proper equipment in the area and in the background, which gives it away. This is definitely New Atlantis. Is the trees. We've seen those trees before, which we pinned as New Atlantis. And we also see the United Colonies logo in the background as well, so yeah. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
I just find it interesting that so we've seen the same ship in multiple colors. What could that possibly mean?
If only there was a theory about some sort of upgrade.
Or something starts with a C. I can't remember what it is. Ship. Oh, customization. I didn't even recognize though that the banners in the background have the same color scheme as the ship. That's a really good catch.
I think they do, unless my eyes are playing tricks on me.
I think they do. The other weird thing about this one is that the art style is like kind of different from any of the other ones we've seen. The ship, I don't know if you get this vibe too, but to me the ship looks almost like a computer graphic. It doesn't look painted like a lot of the other things.
It could be different artist, maybe. There's also a tower in the background, and I've joked it looks like the Citadel from Half-Life 2.
I'm gonna have to take your word for it. Never played Half-Life 2.
Oh, you're missing out.
I know.
You said that so disappointed.
It is disappointing because it's such a revered game and never had the chance to play it.
It holds up very well. And it runs really well on potato graphics. What I mean is, you can run it on a basic laptop. And
Right.
same with Portal. They run really well on old hardware. Which makes sense. Half-Life 2 came out in 2004. I can't pick anything up outside, they're wearing unique clothing, like in the foreground, and then in the background you've got more of the stylized New Atlantis clothes we've seen before, I believe.
There's someone with a very interesting hat. The second most right person.
They kind of remind me of like the weird design of the trees, but also there's like a giraffe thing in Horizon Zero Dawn. Kind of looks like that to me as well.
And it's funny that it is the same shape as the trees.
So that was the New Atlantis Spaceport, and now Mitch will talk about Freestar Collective stuff, which came right after.
Thank you, Yzra. So we know that we know those first two were United Colonies territory, and we know that these next two are Freestar Collective territory because of the way they were like edited into the video. They happened as Will Shen talked about each respective faction. So those first two were United Colonies, and now we're getting into the Freestar Collective stuff. We first get a new look at Aquila City. It looks a lot different, I thought, than the first look we had of it. You see the familiar mountains in the background and that one tall structure in the middle that we also saw in the first one. But now we're outside the walls. And from the outside, it looks a lot denser than it did before, I think. Those buildings are pretty tightly packed together. And the kind of general design of the city reminds me a lot of Windhelm from Skyrim. It's like a fortress. I feel like it might get easy to get lost in there. I dig it a lot, but it's just very different, I thought, from the first look. The first look looked more open, like there was more space between the buildings, that sort of thing. And then outside of the walls, in the foreground, we see somebody with a knife. There's like a bounty hunter or something like that. They're looking at the walls, and they have a holstered knife. And that means holstered weapons are probably coming back. We haven't seen those in a while in a Bethesda Game Studios game, so that's exciting. On the walls of the city, there are skeletons and some drawings depicting some kind of life form. And some people thought these might be Ashta, some people thought they might be something else. I believe it's pretty likely that these are Ashta because we already know that the walls were built to keep the Ashta out. We know that from the Settled Systems video. Emil said such. And the skulls on that wall are consistent with what you would expect a wolf and velociraptor cross to look like. So you can look this up. A wolf skull and a velociraptor skull. It's hard to describe, but if you just kind of cross them together in your head, you could conceivably get something like what you see on the walls there. And then there could also be some confusion about the skeletal structure of the things because it looks like it could be upright. It's kind of a weird structure between the spinal cord, the skull, and the rib cage. I think the reason for that is we typically see skeletons for wolves and velociraptors either in walking positions, say like in a museum, you'll see a velociraptor that's strung up by wires and you see the skeleton that way, or laying down on their side as like they died, they're fossilized, etc. These skeletons are suspended by the skull, so the spine and the rib cage are just hanging freely below them. So I think that might be why it doesn't look like a wolf or a velociraptor, because the spine isn't in its natural kind of position that it would be when the organism was living. So why could the Ashta skeletons be outside the walls, do you think?
I'd say to strike fear, but I don't think the Ashta are going to be very smart. Maybe more like trophies. I feel like the Freestar Collective would be quite a few people would want to collect trophies, right?
Yeah. And even if like the Ashta themselves aren't intelligent enough to be warded off by the skeletons, the person in this concept art doesn't look very friendly to the city. So maybe it's to ward off like human invaders or something like that too.
I will say the wall is very. It's very. I don't know how to phrase it. It's very armoured. It makes me question how big are the Ashta really? Those skeletons suggest maybe they're smaller, but they could easily be like Ashta younglings. That's a possibility. Or maybe it's just there's some other human threat or some other threat on Aquila that they need these reinforced doors.
On the guard post, they've also got those giant machine guns. So they've got to deal with some pretty terrible things.
Because I think if they were just fighting off some creatures that were the same size as a wolf, I think those doors would be overkill for something like that. So unless there's something a lot worse out there, or if the Ashtra are bigger than we expect.
I also noticed near the middle of the art, at the top of one of the buildings, there's a satellite dish, and it looks a lot like modern day satellite dishes that we already have. So this might confirm that the way we currently communicate wirelessly using electromagnetic waves, or in a satellite dish's case, radio waves, are still being used in 2330. And this is also indicated in last year's trailer when like you heard the radio messages at the beginning and they were kind of obscured by distortion and radio feedback. So it's not exactly new info that we're still communicating with radio waves, but it's worth noting because it's pretty deep lore.
With those containers, I don't know if they look like anything in the scientific world. I don't know if you know anything like that.
I've seen some communications equipment that looks a little bit like that, but I'm not educated enough to confidently say what that might be. It could also like store stuff. It looks like a snowman.
I really hope there's a snowman in Starfield somewhere. Or build our own snowman in like a settlement mode. Like, it's an item exclusive to Aquila.
And the game is supposed to be saying yes whenever we try something. So I'm expecting snowmen, Todd.
We're gonna make snow Ashta.
I don't think they'll be as dangerous. Those are the ones I'll be partial to.
If they take the 76 route and you have to find plans for settlement stuff, I think that'd be kind of cool. And Aquila is the only way to get, say, the Ashta skull recipe or something. I know it could be off-putting for some, but for collectors, like, unlike 76 where it's online, it's a single player game, so obviously the recipes don't have to be really hard to grind for. You can get them fairly easily. It's more of a progression thing. You get all these plans and then you can start building more things. So it's like you're learning stuff as you're playing.
Do you see the trees in the foreground there?
Yes.
The last look we saw at Aquila City showed no trees, I don't believe. If there were very few. And you can only really see the tundral hills above the city. But immediately outside the walls, we can now see that there are trees, and it's very lush with moss and other like dense plant life. So if you thought you'd be safe from the Ashta because you'd see them coming from a mile away out on the open tundra, think again. We'll be fighting them, and they'll be hunting us in a dense jungle. So that's something to look forward to. So the Earth-like atmosphere that you see in the sky means that Earth's ecology is presumably a good starting point for analyzing this planet's environment. And I went way overboard again, but there was a 2020 study called Influence of Altitude on the Distribution Pattern of Flora in a Protected Area of Western Himalaya. It's a very long name. But this study, it was a group of Indian researchers. They divided a region of the Himalayan mountains into 5 altitudinal zones. And they surveyed the area and counted the different species of flora in that area. And the results were pretty interesting. They found 324 species of flora, which represented 92 families of flora. And of those families, only 8 of them were observed in all 5 altitudinal zones. 40 of them, or almost half, were observed in a single altitudinal zone, and the remaining 44 were found in more than 1 but less than 5 altitudinal zones. And one of the things the researchers noted, which is reflected in this concept art, is that tree growth is negatively correlated with altitude by a Pearson correlation coefficient of negative 0.96. That is an extreme correlation. A perfect negative correlation would be -1, and this is negative 0.96. So trees are very dependent on altitude. And the study didn't go into the why for this, but I imagine a big factor is oxygen levels, oxygen being higher at lower altitudes. And Bethesda's done this sort of thing before. In Oblivion, lower altitude areas are usually dense forest, while the Jarrell Mountains and even the higher parts of the Gold Coast have fewer trees than a lot of other parts of the map. So it's subtle, but it's a world design concept that Bethesda's doing again. It's encouraging to see like the intricate level of detail that will often go unnoticed.
Very well said.
Thank you. That was a very long-winded way of saying there are trees. The next one is another Aquila City shot, and it looks exactly the same as one of the Neon ones. It's framed very similarly. This time we see kind of a very like dense, busy market in like the alleys of Aquila City. The stonework and the color palette also indicate that it's Aquila City on top of just the timing of it in the video. It's another representation of the density that was not conveyed in the first look at the city we saw. There's a merchant selling fresh fruit, spices, and scrap. In the Neon one, they were selling fish, psychoactive fish. Is that a salamander on the side? Oh, I'm getting sidetracked, jumping all over the place. But there's a salamander, I think, crawling on one of the walls on the right side.
Oh yeah.
That is creepy. I hope that thing isn't hostile.
It's in the city. Surely it's friendly. Although I've got to say, that rifle. Ooh.
It's scoped.
I will say it's just as packed as the Neon market.
This concept art's well timed in the sense that RTX has been in the news lately because it might be coming to Series X, I believe. And there's light cascading through like the scaffolding at the top of the art. There's like beams and wires up there, and the light just shines right down. That would look amazing with RTX. The merchant that I talked about earlier, sitting on the left, also has like glowing glasses, I think.
Kind of looks like a visor.
I wonder if it's some sort of interface thing.
Very possibly.
So on the same person, do you see that gold thing on their chest? I have a guess for what that might be. I think it might be an Ashta claw.
Ooh.
Maybe that they're wearing as a necklace. As busy as this one is, I think that might be all the significant details in it.
Yeah, I think there's some sort of logo on like the person with the rifle. There's some sort of logo on their arm, but you can't make out what it is exactly.
Yeah. I guess it would also be worth mentioning that their clothes and their weapon are made up of the same color scheme.
Like the black and yellow kind of mix.
Yeah. I wonder if that could mean something. You want to take these next two?
Yep. So this next one is the Underbelly of Neon, with fishing barges, which is presumably netted up aurora fish, maybe. There appears to be what looks to be a crane up top that hoists boats out of the water. As you can see on the side, there's two boats hoisted by chains. Looks like there's some sort of mechanism on the ceiling that picks up the boats, and then you've got the spotlights, and maybe the spotlights, maybe they act like lighthouses, or just general lighting. Maybe Neon doesn't get a lot of daytime hours, so they use the lights, or maybe, just maybe, there is something in the water.
That they have to repel with light, ward
Yeah.
off.
Or they use the light to penetrate the water so they can see it coming and give a warning. But also, that woman, think it's a woman? But anyway, the person, they have a funky looking arm. Prosthetics, maybe?
Mm.
Of course, we don't know if we will be able to have prosthetic arms, but definitely NPCs very well could from this concept. If that really is their arm, which some people are convinced it's an arm. I think it's an arm, myself. Do you think it's an arm, Mitch?
I've been looking real closely. I think it is. It's unlike prosthetics we've seen in the real world, because the components that make it up are like, they look like Twizzlers, if you have those in the UK.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
It's like metal rods that are just winding around each other, like a double helix. But I do think I see fingers, like a thumb at the bottom near her hip.
I wonder how the arm would work. It wouldn't be a solid. It wouldn't be a complete solid because you couldn't bend it. But if it's some sort of flexible material that can bend and then move back into like a straight position, your arms down your side, I think maybe that could be how it works. It's some sort of like artificially made, like it's very flexible, because I don't think something akin to bone, where it's designed like that, I don't know how that would. I don't think you'd have a very fun time bending your arm.
Sure.
It's a very funky design, and I kind of like it. If we're allowed to have prosthetic arms, I am choosing one just because I love some prosthetic like designs, like futuristic designs, and I really like that design. But if there's a more tech, like if this is basically saying there is these kind of things, I'd love to have a more cybernetic one. If that's even an option, I mean. I'm kind of jumping the gun with this. But yeah, to me that says prosthetic arms exist in Starfield.
The thing that's getting me about prosthetics is today we have stem cell treatments. And if the literature I've read has any truth to it, it sounds like we'll be able to grow limbs in like the coming decades. So I wonder if prosthetics will act as some sort of like uh, class signifier. Like if you can't afford to get a new limb grown, then you'll have to do the poor person's way and wear a prosthetic, if that makes any sense.
Mm. It's like I think they're called dental implants. They're fairly popular. They take a cast of your real teeth, I believe. So they the right size. They're quite cool, I have to say, but what I've heard, they're very expensive.
Yeah, I can confirm that. I'm missing teeth in a couple places just because there were no adult teeth that grew under the baby teeth. So I've got a couple gaps, and it was way too expensive for me to get implants. So I wear a retainer with the hope of one day being able to get implants.
So yeah, that was the Underbelly of Neon concept. Do you have any closing thoughts on this one?
Just that I can't wait to walk across that catwalk. And here you can see the waves kind of splashing up on the support column of the fishing platform. I bet they're gonna nail the sound design of that, and you'll be able to hear the wash kind of crashing into the pipes and everything. It's
Oh,
just gonna be a cool experience.
do you know what's popped in my head? Like, you're walking along and sometimes you can hear the metal creaking. I know I said I don't like that sound, especially in shipwrecks, but like
Yeah,
you can hear the structure groaning from like the water pressure.
that'll be awesome.
Alright, so the next one confirms there's a train in New Atlantis. And they appear to be magnetic trains, which I think you've brought up in some posts, I believe.
Yes. The trains the train here is almost definitely what's called an electrodynamic train. What's really cool about electrodynamic trains is that they actually levitate above the rail. In the real world, they levitate by about 4 inches. Seems like it's a little more than that in this concept art. But the reason electrodynamic trains make sense is because they're considered to be very energy efficient. The levitation eliminates any friction with the rail or road below the train. So if you're like a new civilization, probably trying to conserve energy, it would make sense that they would decide on an electrodynamic train. The reason electrodynamic trains aren't more common on Earth is because we already have this huge conventional railroad system. And it's not as simple as just like laying down magnetic track on top of the railroad track. You'd have to like take out the railroad and then put on the magnetic track. So it'd be a very expensive process. So there hasn't been much investment into the magnetic trains, but there are some famous systems like the bullet train in Japan and like other maglev trains. So that's technically a theory, but it looks very, very similar to what an electrodynamic train looks like on the bottom.
Absolutely. So this would be like they divide the city like a comparison would be the Imperial City in Oblivion, where it's divided in sections, and maybe in the New Atlantis case, you use this train to get around to different sections. Some parts might be inaccessible else. And it would be a way to like divide the world space, reduce load, which would probably help performance as well, than loading the whole city.
I also think of the movie Zootopia. It's kind of divided like the Imperial City, but by biomes. It would be cool to have another districted city in New Atlantis. Ultimately, though, I think my hope would be that even if the districts are kind of far apart or if each one's really big, we would still be able to like walk seamlessly from one to the next. Like I want the trains to be an option and I want the trains to be quicker. I want them to actually be useful, right? But like I still want it to be one seamless open world.
You know, I've just noticed two of those guys in the foreground. They're holding rifles. I did not notice that until now.
It could be maybe like United Colonies security guards or something. Cydonia security maybe, or SysDef or Vanguard.
Yeah, they appear to be having a conversation of some sort. By the way, I just want to say, you know we said last episode in Fallout they didn't have gun manufacturers.
They did?
They do, only in Pacific games, and they're never mentioned in other titles. And then I presume the real world guns are all their real world manufacturer, but they can't say that for legal reasons.
I guess I was thinking more along the lines of like on the actual gun model.
Yeah. I hope we see like a whole list of manufacturers, weapon manufacturers for Starfield, outside of like combat tech, which you've already seen, because that would be so cool to like read upon. Like even if it's just a paragraph, just read that. I love those kind of details.
Yeah, same. And it could be like maybe the Freestar Collective, uses one manufacturer's guns and United Colonies uses another. That's kind of how it is in the real world.
Well, like weapon manufacturers, they have contracts, deals. It's like any business. You know, you're contracted to make stuff for other people, right? So maybe the Freestar Collective contract one manufacturer, and they're more in favour of that manufacturer and have like stocks maybe in that company, whereas the United Colonies might have their own division solely for making tech weapons or something like that. Or maybe they both own their own manufacturers and they have their own custom guns.
I believe it was confirmed in an interview that there are lasers in the game. So that could mean energy weapons.
Pew pew.
Pew pew indeed. There was another point I wanted to make on the trains. So if you recall, there was that neon concept art, or what we have long believed to be neon. It was never explicitly said to be neon. That also has a train station. This is the first look we get at an actual train. We already kind of knew they were in the game because of this train station. That was the one that also had Ryujin Industries kind of central as the focal point. So that billboard got me thinking. We've always thought it was a neon. If Ryujin Industries has like a sign outside of this train station, shouldn't they have some type of like corporate or manufacturing presence in that city as well? I mean, they don't necessarily have to, but I think that would make a lot of sense. So here's my theory. I think that art that we thought was neon is actually in New Atlantis, in some type of like nightlife district of New Atlantis or something that looks a lot like neon, but there's a train station that goes through there. Because if neon is on a fishing platform, that's not big enough for a train system, I don't think. I mean, of course, Ryujin Industries could have like a factory or something on Neon as well, but I don't know if Neon would have enough space, again, because it's just a fishing platform. What do you think of the plausibility of that? Have I found something we disagree on, or do you think that could be New Atlantis as well?
Yeah, it could be. It could just be in like another section, of course. Yeah, almost definitely could be. Very well. We'll find out soon.
Mm-hmm. Next one is a Crimson Fleet pirate, just kind of looking into a black, smoky background that ironically looks like the background of the Skyrim main menu. But there's not too much to poke at here because we've already seen this same armor set, I believe. It's just a Crimson Fleet pirate with the Jolly Roger on their back. Not too much to talk about there. The following one is like a factory scene. There's somebody welding what looks to be like a wagon or some type of cart thing. I didn't notice any markings or emblems to indicate like their faction alliance, but I think this might be a combat space because there's like a red hue in the whole building, and it's kind of dense, and there's chains, and it doesn't look very friendly. So I think there might be some fighting going on in here when we get to it.
Yeah, I think we've kind of seen this angle before. It might be different. Is it different art? Hang on, no, it's definitely different art. Yeah, I think it's very similar to previous art, but it's got like background effects and stuff, which is kind of cool. But definitely something we've seen before.
Yeah, and if you look at like the walls, I think they're white walls with the red hue over everything. It's hard to tell, but the walls and the windows higher up, those look like the same walls and windows that we saw in the 2018 leaked images.
Oh yeah, kind of does. Yeah, I see that.
As if we needed more confirmation that those were legitimate. I don't think we did.
I wonder what's in those blue barrels.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm inclined to say like helium-3 or Aurora for like every question like that, but there's more to the universe than those things, obviously. So I'd guess it's something we haven't heard about, or it could just be like water.
Could be oil, for the like machinery.
Mm. Well, it looks like to the left of those, something's on fire.
Oh yeah, actually, kind of looks like one of the barrels are. So maybe they're explosive.
Mm. It's one of those that definitely raises more questions than answers, I feel like.
Mm.
Not much too concrete we can pull, but it is a fun one to look at.
There's a plastic chair. So quite funny.
There it is. That's dangerous because plastic chairs burn very, very easily. Like a plastic chair, you'll get flames like 10 feet high.
Oh really?
Yeah, I know from experience. I think we can move on to the next one though, if you're ready.
Yep. So this next one, it shows two members of presumably Constellation, which is like the player. If you've seen the leaked images, that is definitely the player model. And there's another character what looks to be not. I don't think the gear is exactly the same, but the helmet and overall, they don't appear to have the jetpack, I don't believe. If you correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I think you're right.
So maybe that's a companion. They wear a similar suit to us, or if it's actually a new, or sorry, if it's another member of Constellation you're on like a mission with. Like sometimes you have to go on those AI-driven missions where you have to follow an NPC around. This concept has very weird vegetation, or at least I hope that's vegetation. They kind of look like Venus flytraps and like these, sometimes like hexagon art, like it's like a hive, if you like, with the hexagons, all those kind of shapes.
Yeah, I was thinking the same.
Do you have any thoughts on this outside that?
It's hard for me to comment on like the walls of this like flower hive just because it's so weird. um, but I'm more of my energy was drawn towards the two people we see because the person ahead, the other constellation member, presumably, has the same helmet as us. So we know that the protagonist's base helmet isn't unique. They also don't have the jetpack, which is odd. And then for this last point, I'm probably reading way too much into it because this is concept art and not like a screenshot. But the other person is way ahead of the protagonist, probably 20 or 30 yards ahead. That would never happen in Fallout 4 or Skyrim. So we know with Creation Engine 2, one of the things they're revamping is AI. So I wonder if maybe sometimes our follower will be the one that's kind of the leader, like forging ahead through a dungeon, rather than always behind us.
I could see that, yeah. If you're right, if we move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is the Frontier ship. And correct me if I'm wrong. It has different thrusters, like the four like balancing thrusters. I believe they are different because they look like, I'm gonna say ion, but I don't know if that's correct. That's what I'd call them personally. But they don't look like the typical rockets we saw in the E3 trailer. But like, you know, they ignite and they look like well, like flames, orange flames, sorry. And like the it looks like it's a toxic pit because like the greeny yellow smoke coming out of the crater. So I'm wondering where this could be. I mean, if you look in the distance, it looks like a ocean, like water and some land. So who like, what could this be? Could this be like some sort of acid pit or like some sort of volcanic or like some acidic formation somewhere on some planet? I don't know. I think it could be interesting. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think one thing that's for certain is that when we get out of the ship and we look at our O2 CO2 meter, it will be almost completely CO2 and very little O2 when we're near that green gas. But yeah, that ocean at the top is weird because what it means is that that pit that the green gas is coming out of is below sea level, but the water or whatever liquid makes up that ocean like doesn't penetrate the pit that we see here. So it's just kind of a unique or interesting land formation.
Definitely. And I don't think there's any more that we can take from this one. Unless you have any additional thoughts on it.
Just that the ship looks very modular.
Yeah, so
Very modular.
yeah. Like I brought up earlier, the thrusters are different. I believe, anyway. The front four ones kind of like balance it. That's what I imagine they're for, and that's why there are angles, is so you can like balance at different points to keep the ship, well, hovering in a sense, which should be very beneficial in landing. Of course, none of our spaceships look like that right now, but maybe one day they will.
Hopefully. Bethesda seems to think so. The next concept art we see is the protagonist alone in a really weird, almost dreamlike, desolate landscape. Some kind of weird rock makes up the land. And my favorite part of it is that taking up almost the entire sky is some kind of nearby planet or moon.
It's got some kind of like weird elevation on the ground. So if there's some sort of, I don't know, the ground doesn't look very, it looks very alien. Like extremely alien. And I have a theory that this could be the planet where the alien artifact is that we believe is the thing we've discovered.
I like it.
And maybe this plays into it. You know, we're going into a, like we brought up earlier, Constellation, the last group of space explorers. We're in an uncharted section, and this is part of like the prologue. And this is complete speculation, of course. But maybe it could be the planet where we discover this monolith device. Whatever it ends up being.
And I guess it would be a good time just to, like, for the people who don't remember or didn't catch it, in the 2021 trailer from E3, there was like a drawing and a photograph of some really weird alien type structure that had like these rings that came out of the ground and rotated. And it was implied that the player discovered it. Just as like a refresher.
And we believe we also see this device in the Journey Through Space art as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah, at the bottom. Thank you.
I have pointed out that it, in the Starfield Alliance Discord, that it kind of looks like part of New Atlantis, but a lot of it doesn't match up as well, so for now we still believe it's the same alien structure.
Going back to that like planet or moon that's in the sky, I'm really excited for when it's nighttime on this planet and in the sky you can see the light reflecting off of that. I'm going to call it a moon. Like, and it would just be so like bright, taking up almost everything. If you look up in Skyrim, there's that nearby planet, and this is even bigger than that.
I think the size of that planet, I think whatever we're standing on, this is the moon. And that thing in the sky is the planet it's orbiting.
Oh, I'm so dumb. You're exactly right.
I believe you can see this in No Man's Sky. If you land on a planet's moon, you can kind of get the same view.
That makes total sense. This is definitely a moon. Good thinking. I think we could probably go to the next one, though.
Yep.
So here we see a small fleet of ships cruising through, it might be a nebula, cruising through space with clouds and dust behind them, the rings of a planet, too. Reddit user The Critic on the Starfield subreddit pointed out that part of these ships near the middle also appear on a completely different ship, which would indicate modular ship construction. You could even say it confirms modular ship construction.
Definitely. It's got some really cool like X thrusters. They're like shaped like an X.
Ooh, yeah, it does. And they're the ion ones again.
Yeah, and there's like where usually that spherical device is on the frontier. There's like this disc, and to me, it reminds me of the USS Enterprise from Star Trek. It has like that disc body.
I think that might be the cockpit.
I think the cockpit is in the same position at the front. It's just darkened. I think what's most visually striking about this is there are no visible thrusters on the front to like as balancing. So maybe this ties back to what I said a few episodes ago. There was a ship that looked like it had no thrusters, aside from the back ones. So what if this is a pure momentum-based ship, where it's based on speed, on takeoff?
Oh, there could be a landing gear, because then we wouldn't see anything on the bottom. Or if there's nothing on the bottom, you could use like a track to launch it. Good theory. But yeah, most ships have had like the vertical thrusters on the bottom and the horizontal ones, as you noted. But we only see the horizontal ones here.
Unless they're shrouded in the shadows of there's like darker parts of the ships.
Or if they retract.
Ooh, that could be possible.
Is just thinking back. I'm not exactly going back to every concept art and counting, but just going off memory. It seems that ships that are in space, we don't see those vertical thrusters, but if they're in an atmosphere, then we do.
Possible, I suppose.
So now that we basically know that modular ship construction is in the game, I have to ask you, are you going to go for the weirdest, funkiest, most shitposty ship you can go for, or are you going to try to build like a cool looking one?
Probably a cool one. The way I like the best looking options, and what is my personal taste, what I think works the best, and that's usually the same class of items, but sometimes I like to mix and match. Like when I play Fallout 4 and I have a plasma rifle, for some reason the E3 demo, when they're customizing weapons in like the little time lapse, when they're showing off weapon customization, I always make my weapons exactly like that. So I'm sure I will be heavily influenced by whatever Bethesda show, if they show any customization of ships. If that's even a thing.
You'll have to cover your eyes at that part at E3.
Yeah, I like when I have a pipe pistol, I turn it into the exact same pipe weapon they made at the 2015 demo for Fallout 4. I make the same plasma rifle, you know. The only one I don't make is the laser sniper. I think... Did they make a sniper?
I think they took one that wasn't usually a sniper rifle and made it into one.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the laser rifle sniper, like, barrel. I like the automatic barrel. So I think I might be influenced by how things look, rather than... I don't know, I think it's too early. If ship customization's even in there, which there's implications there might be. And I would really love ship customization, but definitely I would probably go with what is cooler looking to me. I guarantee someone out there will make the best statistic ship they can make. The one with the best stats, the best everything.
I don't really look forward to the day when the community figures out like what is the best ship to have, and then that's the one that
you have like
most
50 guides. How to unlock this part of this ship.
Yeah.
So I think that's everything on this concept.
I think so.
And before we close the show, there's one bonus concept that wasn't in this video, but it was in the Welcome to Constellation video. Do you want to say this one, Mitch?
Sure. It was uploaded on February 16th, and we can only see it in a YouTube thumbnail from Bethesda. And it's a video that's sent to new Constellation members when they join. It's an unlisted YouTube video, so you need a direct link to see it. And it's basically just Todd wearing the Constellation watch saying, "Thank you for joining Constellation. We're excited to like share this journey with you." But obviously the thing that a lot of people talked about was the thumbnail, because it shows a library that is presumably in like Constellation's hub. It's these huge walls of books. People are reading books. There's a hologram in the middle. Just seems like a very studious center. And if this is indeed Constellation property, it shows this new side of Constellation. Before, we've seen them as going out there and exploring, potentially being ready for a fight if necessary. They're very adventurous and hardened. Now we're seeing this different side of it, of Constellation that's very intellectual and wise. And that's an interesting angle to Constellation that we haven't seen before.
It's a very cool art as well. It's so cool that we made it our Reddit banner. It just fit the lore subreddit for Starfield massively.
Yeah, I have a feeling that one's gonna stay for a while because it does fit really well. And then I believe it was Oda that first discovered something amazing about this art, which is that if you look closely at the 2018 teaser, you can see that there's a little glass dome with something inside of it. That's pretty clearly this library.
At least we've potentially discovered the purpose of the 2018 station finally.
What confuses me is that that station had a number on it. It seemed like it was one of many. And if it has this huge, intricate library, I think that's a unique space station then. I doubt there would be more than one.
Since there's manufacturers, we know there's manufacturers from the combat tech on the weapon. Maybe Constellation, when they first started, they placed an order for a custom ship design. And that's the ship we see in the 2018 teaser. It's a very unique looking space station, so it wouldn't surprise me if Constellation designed it and had a manufacturer make it and they listed it as a model number. Or Constellation ordered a model and then they asked for a custom design of it, which would probably be more expensive, but we don't know how old the station is, so.
JBG on the Starfield Alliance Discord brought to my attention that on February 13th, 2021, so months before we even had last year's E3 trailer, I made a post on Discord saying, I know this isn't what we're looking at, but it kind of looks like a bookshelf in regards to that thing at the center of this star station in the 2018 teaser. I was right on the money, and I said, I know this isn't what we're looking at. And it was. So I was right and wrong at the same time. And JBG replied on the same day, it always looked like a library to me. So we were so close yet so far. I just thought that was really funny.
You're a prophet now.
I am, I guess so. But that was all of the concept arts, notable quotes, all the new information we've had, and a lot of fun theories. Was there anything else you wanted to say about any of these concept arts or quotes?
No.
All right, awesome. So we'll move on to our last section of the show then. We always like to close the show with a recommendation of some sort, anything that scratches the Starfield itch. Yzra, what would you recommend this month?
Mass Effect 2. I beat it the other week. I'm on Mass Effect 3 now, so I'm probably going to recommend that next month. Mass Effect 2, fantastic. Like, I had to gear up for the final mission and be very specific with it, or I was going to lose crew members, and I wouldn't have been able to transfer my save, and I really wanted to do that. I would never have played Mass Effect 3, but For me, this month, Mass Effect 2, I recommend that game.
Very good. I still, unfortunately, haven't played the Mass Effect trilogy, but hopefully everyone else does, because that's a good recommendation, because that's really kind of like the pinnacle, you could say, of sci-fi RPGs. It's right up there with KOTOR in terms of just like notoriety, and we now have the Legendary Edition.
Absolutely.
My pick for the month is going to be Cyberpunk 2077, and I picked it for a very specific reason. So we've heard about how you can pick your own story at the beginning of the game. You can pick the United Colonies, you can pick the Freestar Collective, you can even start the game with Regen Industries as like getting hired and doing like the corpo thing. In Cyberpunk 2077, you can do the same thing. You can start with 3 life paths. You can start with corpo, working for a giant corporation. You can be a street kid, which I would equate to the United Colonies start, just based on what we know so far. Or you can do the nomad start, which I would equate to the Freestar Collective. The nomad comes from like outside Night City. But if you like Bethesda Game Studios games, you'll probably dig Cyberpunk 2077. It's a huge open world. It doesn't feel as alive, I would say, as a Bethesda Game Studios game. It's not as much of like a simulation as BGS does, but it's still a great RPG with plenty of choice and some really interesting characters and amazing graphics. So if you haven't played it, it's worth it.
That's a good pick.
Thank you. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to share?
This month I actually do. We have a Discord, if people don't know. It's not very active right now. The target is, as we get more deeper lore, we get more lore more frequently, there'll be more to talk about. And soon we're going to be introducing new channels. Going to be formatted a lot better than the channels we have now. And why not join, right? And also, if you're watching the YouTube version, if you've gotten this far and you haven't subscribed, it would really, really mean a lot to us if you could subscribe, because it helps us grow, and we are planning to do lore videos, not just the podcast, but lore content. So that's kind of a teaser for what's coming up. I don't know what that's going to look like, but the goal is to give as high quality lore with some gameplay, and I think it's going to be very fun. So yeah, that's all my closing thoughts. Unless you've got some ones you want to add.
Just that as we get closer to the game and stuff, like we still have a lot of plans for Lorefield. We plan the subreddit is going to be really good platform for lore discussion, I think. Discord is going to roar to life as we introduce those new channels to get more members. And then the YouTube content is going to change as well. Not change, there's going to be more of it. And the podcast is going to evolve. Obviously, right now we're very news heavy because that's pretty much all, all we're getting. We're not getting a ton of lore exactly, but it will become much more of a lore show as we get more information and get closer to release and beyond.
Definitely.
For that reason, I guess it would be a good time to say that we're kind of thinking of the show as like seasons. So from now to E3, it's like season 1. And then hopefully with season 2, ideally like between E3 and release, we'll get a little deeper into the lore stuff. And then season 3 and beyond will be like really deep lore content and kind of narrative stuff. So something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
All right, this has been the Lorefield Podcast, episode 9. You can find us on Reddit at r/Lorefield, Twitter at LorefieldNet, Twitch at Lorefield Network, and YouTube at just Lorefield. Just search Lorefield and we'll pop right up. Thank you so much for listening. This was a fun and very long show, but there was so much to break down. It was a great time. And hopefully, we'll see you next month. Thanks, everyone.
Bye all.